Welcome those in attendance at the courthouse or online to the July 22nd Douglas County Board of County Commissioners business meeting. We want to welcome any of you who are at the Douglas County Courthouse or joining us online, and we want to pass a bit of information regarding how we run our meetings on Zoom during this time of social distancing. If visual aids are used during the meeting, the presenter will share the screen with the call. Participants will not be able to view them without a computer, smartphone, or tablet. Excuse me. All participants will be entered into the meeting with their audio muted, meaning the commission and the public will not be able to hear you. Presenters will be unmuted when their agenda item comes up. We ask that all online presenters use good conference call etiquette and mute their line when not speaking and introduce themselves each time they speak. If you have a public comment on an agenda item or under regular public comment, please use the raise your hand function on Zoom. Staff will call on you and unmute you. We ask that speakers give their name and address for the minutes. The county reserves the right to shut off the microphone and remove any speaker from the meeting if they are vulgar, rude, or inappropriate. The chat function for this meeting has been disabled, and a recording of this meeting will be available on our website after each meeting. And with that, we will launch into the July 22nd meeting. We have 6 items on our consent agenda, 1 item on our regular agenda, then we do appointments. We'll take general public comment after that, and then have some time for commissioner or administrator miscellaneous. So let's start with our consent agenda. Does any commissioner wish to remove a consent agenda item for further discussion?
I do not.
Okay, we also ask the public if there's any item on the consent agenda that they would like to have removed for further discussion. Sarah, is there anyone there at the courthouse to talk on any of these items or asking to pull an item from the consent agenda?
There is not.
I realized that my first question of was there anyone at the courthouse was a ridiculous question. Sorry about that. And Jill Jolliker monitors online. And Jill, is there anyone online who would like us to remove an item on our consent agenda?
There is not.
Great, thank you, Jill. So with that, I'll take a motion for the consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Passes 3-0. Now we'll move on to our regular agenda, which is a discussion on the temporary signage request for Robinson Park. And we'll turn it over to Sarah to introduce our guests.
Thank you, commissioners. We had a request from the community group between a rock and I'm going to get it wrong, so I'm going to look at it. Between a rock and a hard place, a project working on that related to the Robinson Park, which is owned by the county, but maintained by the city of Lawrence near the Riverside, near 6th and Massachusetts Streets near City Hall. And there was a request to put it before the commission for further discussion.
Thank you. And it looks like Pauline Sharp is here to visit with us about this. Hi, Pauline, you want to address the commission? You'll need to unmute yourself, Pauline.
There we go.
There you go.
First of all, I want to thank you for letting us present our project to you today. I expected to see a couple other people on here and I don't see them yet, but I'll get started.
Well, I real wanted to see, there's somebody, could you list the names of who you were expecting? Because I'm not seeing the names that I was expecting. So if there's someone else that I should have in the panel.
Ty Edwards.
Okay.
And Jay Johnson.
Okay, I did not have them on my list, but I am moving them over so they'll be able to be panelists now. So you should be all set.
Okay, all right, great. My name is Pauline Eads Sharp. I'm a citizen of Kaw Nation and I live in Wichita. The Kaw are also known as Kansa, but we call ourselves Kaw or the Kansa people. We're the tribe from whom the state of Kansas took its name. I am the granddaughter of Lucy Taya Eads, first woman chief of the Kaw. She was sent to Haskell in 1901 and left in 1908. She lived in Lawrence 3 different times in her life. She was the adopted daughter of Chief Washunga, who was a minor chief in Kansas and became principal chief in Indian Territory. He was born somewhere along the Kansas River. I'm one of the co-leaders on the project Between the Rock and a Hard Place. Dave Lowenstein, the other project leader, is sorry he could not join us today. And I wanted to introduce my other 2 colleagues that are on this call with me. Dr. Ty Edwards is a history professor and the director of Kansas Studies Institute at Johnson County Community College. Her most recent book is Osage Women and Empire, Gender and Power. Jay Johnson is a professor and associate chair of geography and atmospheric science at the University of Kansas, where he also directs the Center for Indigenous Research, Science, and Technology. The Big Red Rock is what my Kansa ancestors called the Sacred Prayer Rock. For hundreds of thousands of years, the rock sat near the confluence of Shunganunga Creek and the Kansas River near Topeka. For the past 90 years, it has resided in Lawrence. The ancestors considered it a sacred ceremonial object and visited it regularly, where they offered prayers to Wakanda during the 2 or 3 centuries they lived in the river valley bearing our name. In the late 1800s, they documented the significance of the rock in their prayer chart. Over the years, the subject of the Sacred Prayer Rock has come up several times. Typically, someone in Lawrence will be researching or writing your history and find documentation on the rock. They reach out to Kaw Nation, someone suggests action. There's an article in the Lawrence Journal World, followed by some discussion, then the subject's dropped. The last time this happened was in 2015. I was serving on the Kaw Cultural Committee at that time and was contacted by Dave Lowenstein. Once again, no action was taken. But our paths crossed again in early 2019, and Dave mentioned there was a grant available from Interchange, a program of the Mid-America Arts Alliance funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. He applied and our project was accepted. In addition, the project has a generous grant from the Elizabeth Schultz Environmental Fund. We began work last fall. Our goal is to engage citizens of Lawrence, city leaders, and commissioners to reimagine Robinson Park. There are other Kaw citizens participating in the project, and we have presented to the Kaw General Council and Tribal Council. The project runs through the end of 2020 unless an extension is granted because of COVID-19. We were able to host 2 public presentations in Lawrence before activities were shut down. We're looking for creative ways to engage people going forward. I'm going to turn this over to Ty now. She will talk about what we've learned in the meetings before COVID-19, and then Jay will talk about our request for the temporary signage at Robinson Park. So Ty.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay. Well, just a few brief things to elaborate on what Pauline was saying. And I would also like to add, I'm a Douglas County resident, so this also has a lot of importance to me personally. So as Pauline was saying, this land was part of the Kansas homeland. It was also part of the Shawnee Reservation when the Shawnees were forced to relocate to what is now Kansas. And of course, the Delaware Reservation was just on the north side of the river, right? And they did a lot of farming on that north side of the river that you can see from the park. By the time we're into the late 1800s, that became where that park is now, was the site of the Douglas County Jail, which I assume has something to do with the fact that the county still owns the land. It is in that jail where a mob broke into that jail and took 3 men, as you may have heard from the Lawrence NAACP. Pete Vinegar, Isaac King, and George Robertson were taken from that jail and then lynched on the bridge outside of the park. And then by the early 20th century, the jail had moved to east of the courthouse, and the buildings that had been part of the jail became a workhouse. And then after that, they became a social service hospital. Then it became sort of informally known as Bridge Park. And then, as you probably know, in 1929 is when the citizens of Lawrence were planning their 75th celebration of the founding of the town. And that's when a whole flurry of activity happened at the park. The Spanish-American War cannon was moved from South Park to what is now Robinson Park. The Big Red Rock was plucked is the wrong word because they broke a crane trying to get it out, but the rock was taken from the river Shenandoah Creek where it met with the Kansas River and removed to that park. And that's when they renamed it Robinson Park. That also happened in 1929. And then the famous photos of the rock's dedication as a monument to the pioneers, and when that plaque that bears the name of the white founders of town was affixed to that rock at the time. And then we've had two public events, one in January and one in February. And we've used all of our public events for the public to do brainstorming about what they would like to see done with the park. So I'm just going to give you a survey of some of the things that they've talked about. And I do want to say a lot of this is on our website at www.robinsonpark1929.com. So many people said that they believe that we need a much fuller explanation in the park about the rock's history. The rock is a glacial erratic. It predates humanity's existence as a species by, I think, 3 times over. So the rock's age is enormous. Of course, the rock was sacred to the Kansas people, which is also well documented that Pauline spoke about. None of that is mentioned. And repeatedly in our public events, people have said that the Kansas or Kaw Nation should have a central role in deciding what happens to the rock going forward. And that's a complex situation. There's questions that people have asked, like, should the rock be moved again? And questions people have asked about that is, should it be moved to a place designated by the Kansas, perhaps on land that the Kansas own? Should it be moved to another more accessible park? Although by the time we got into our second meeting, a lot of people were kind of rejecting that because of these other issues of ownership. Someone did ask, I thought this was important for perhaps to ask all of you, does the county consider itself the owner of that rock? And I think that might be an interesting philosophical question for you to contemplate. If the rock is ever removed, we've had people repeatedly say that the rock should be replaced by a piece of artwork that is maybe reminiscent of the rock to bring attention to the fact that it was there, so that we're not erasing that history, but we are documenting that history. Then there's some other things that people have said is, should the land where the park is now be given to the Kansas Nation, to the Kaw people? So should that be something that the city and county maybe jointly care for in a relationship with the Kansas people? And some other things is, if the rock is allowed to stay there in the park, people have asked if it could be more prominently lit, because the way people go by that park is more in cars than on foot. And so doing something to raise the prominence of the rock in the park could be done with lighting. Then, of course, the plaque on the rock is one of the most troubling things to many people. That is a desecration of that rock. Of course, moving it could also be considered theft. But the plaque on it, of course, makes no mention of the Kansas. And if you've ever gone to the park, there's a pedestal that it sits on that has another plaque or 2, I think, on it. And none of those mention the Kansas people either. People have talked about renaming the park. So another thing I would encourage you to do is, if you go to our website, robinsonpark1929.com, and click on Charles Robinson at the top of the page, we've got I would call it short because I'm a historian. People that read on the internet might call it long. Biography of Charles Robinson that can give you a little more complex understanding of who he is. He does play a central role in the early history of our state. He also was superintendent of Haskell Indian Nations University. He was the 3rd superintendent of the organization. He amassed a spectacular amount of land that some people would call speculative and swindling and fraudulent. from indigenous people in the state. So there's a lot of complexity to his life, and we've tried to show that on the website. So people have discussed in our public events if the park should be renamed. This was advocated by many. And people have talked about focusing on reconciliation in the renaming of the park and the future of the park, focus on colonialism and its impact, which a lot of the park's history relates to. Robinson, of course, the rock itself, and then the canon that is in the park is from the Spanish-American War, which is, of course, central to U.S. colonialism abroad. One person mentioned that we should perhaps call it Honesty Park and use the park to understand the full history of that land and the objects that are in it, which of course includes the lynching that I mentioned that the NAACP is working on, and the reservations and indigenous peoples that are connected to it. Many people have said they would like more accessibility to the park, and the two prominent ways people have discussed this is by making sure that the park is on the Lawrence Loop, so that people that are using the Lawrence Loop for hiking, etc., could be able to get to it. People have talked about having a walkway that's maybe down by the river that you can go from the park to City Hall. And then some people have also asked for an elevated pedestrian bridge from one of the corners in order to be able to cross the traffic. I will say I have 2 young children. With a lot of focus, I can get them across the multiple streets to get to the park. So it can be done. But of course, a pedestrian bridge would be nice if you were trying to get to it frequently and safely. So in sum, the things that we've heard from the public at our events is that the park should be a place of healing. The park should be a place of remembering the complex history of all the things that have happened there and all the things that have taken place that we know about on that land, and that it should be a place of reparations. And so one of the things I thought I would end with that one of our participants at the public event said is that it should be a place of reparations, and the rock in this park is an opportunity to show the city and county cares to repair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ty. My name is Jay Johnson, long-term Lawrence resident. I wanted to talk with you a little bit about the signs that we're asking to put up in the park, the temporary signs, I should say that quickly. So obviously we've had to stop our work in February due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we've been able to continue meeting ourselves in small groups with members of the tribe, but we've had a hard time figuring out ways for us to re-engage the community. And so the signs are, at least in one aspect, trying to get people re-engaged. So we're going to be doing a survey on our website, and these signs, which I will attempt to share. I know that some of them were shared with the commission members, but there is, hopefully I'm sharing one of the signs. Is that coming through? Okay.
Yeah, we can see it.
So we envision these as 3 by 6 foot vinyl signs. They'll be on temporary stakes. We hope to have them situated, the 3 situated so that northbound bridge traffic would be able to see one, southbound traffic across the bridge would be able to see another, and then 6th Street traffic would be able to see the third. So that people, as they were driving around and across the bridge, would be able to get the major questions that we're asking. So the 3 signs, I believe I am showing you the "Let's Imagine This Park's Future" question. Another one of the signs is worded, "What does this rock mean to the Kanza people?" Sort of getting people to understand that this rock has a much longer history than as a pioneer monument. And then the 3rd sign asking, should this park be named for Charles Robinson? So those are the 3 signs and the mode that we hope to post them. We are hoping to have them up for 3 months so that people would have an opportunity to see them, visit the website, and re-engage with the discussions that we're hoping to have. And now we're available to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Pauline, Ty, and Jay. We appreciate you sharing this information with us. Let's open it up to our commissioners if they have any questions.
I don't have any questions, but I do want to say thank you for sharing your history with us, and thank you, Ty, for the history lesson. I mean, it's fascinating. I drive by it all the time, but I don't know that, other than once many years ago, that I've taken the time to actually go stand there. And I was going to ask how they moved the rock in 1929.
Well, I should say that if you hear the lore about it, people say that it was moved in the night or stolen in the night. The actual truth is they went in the day on a train with a train crane from the Santa Fe Railroad to get it out of the ground, but it was so heavy and bigger than they thought, it broke the chain. So it took them into the night to get it and then drove it back to the park.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your efforts to raise awareness about it. And I think those are some really good questions that the community and the Kansa need to have that conversation and move forward. That's yeah. So I look forward to seeing how this the signs, the outreach goes. And do you have something like on Facebook and some sort of social media outreach to try to get people?
We do have Facebook. We are also occasionally using Twitter. I'm not a great Twitter person, but others in the group are better at it than I, and in addition to the website. And we're also looking into some other means of getting feedback from community members as well.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick comment, and that is I'm really grateful for this effort. I am glad for the remark about tying in the lynching episode, that horrible event that is kind of coming to our consciousness now. I was a little concerned that the NAACP was talking about that park, at least in early conversations, as a place where the monument, the signage that goes along with the lynching memorial might be one of the sites for that. So I was a little concerned that this, it's two really big ideas, big events kind of sparring over the same site, but maybe it's actually all part of one huge conversation. So I'm glad to hear that being pulled into this, and hope that the NAACP, that's the subcommittee that's working on the lynching memorial, is part of your working group too. And Pauline, I would just say thank you so much for helping us try again to do a proper, respectful community effort around this. I'm grateful for your time and energy on this, and for your tribe's patience with us as we go at it again, and hopefully get a right result, and one that's respectful and true. So thank you for your part in this, and I'm anxious to see how the conversation goes. And that's a really interesting question about does the county own the rock? I think there are a lot of lots of levels to that question. So appreciate the question and the thinking that's going to have to go into it.
Yeah, I would just echo my fellow commissioners on appreciation, and just extend the thoughtfulness that has gone into clearly how you're engaging with the public. I mean, you're not coming with an already sort of formed idea and this is what but to have that discussion, to spend some time just discovering what we know about it and recognizing the complexity, that's, I'm not going to say refreshing. It's exciting to hear, that it's really about having a conversation and understanding, some things that maybe are not as flattering, but are also part of our history. And that's what we have to understand and deal with. And I love some of the ideas that were shared. And I really look forward to continuing hearing more about this project and what you all are doing. And just grateful for the work you're doing. I love the history lesson. I know this park well. I used to host like scavenger hunts, and this was always a great place to send people because they never knew it was there, and it was a little hard to get to, and they would learn something when they were there. I wish I had all the history that you just shared with us. That would have made it even more educational. So yeah, so this is a oh yeah, Pauline, go ahead.
I see Dave Lowenstein's on the call now, and he just sent me a text and he said, I think the lynching memorial is going to be in a different place closer to the bridge.
Yeah, Dave, you want to unmute yourself? You're a presenter here if you have any other comments you want to share. Maybe he doesn't want to share any more comments.
Incognito.
Possible. Oh, there you go, Dave.
Hi there, friends. I have my 3-year-old right now, so I'm not able to really get into the conversation, but I really appreciate, he's yelling at me. I appreciate everyone's focus on this today. I think Pauline and Ty and Jay are doing a great job, and we'll continue to have this conversation, and we hope to get the signs approved. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave. I don't have any questions. This is a public hearing item, so we do want to make sure we give opportunity for the public to comment on this. Sarah, is there anyone there at the courthouse who would like to provide comment on this agenda item?
No, there is not.
Thank you. And Jill, anyone online?
No, there is not.
Okay, so seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission for any final comments or motions.
I'm happy to make the motion. I move that we approve temporary signage for Robinson Park regarding a community-based project called Between a Rock and a Hard Place.
Second?
Moved and seconded, and I just can't wait to hear more about what you do on this. This is really great work, so thank you very much. All those in favor say aye.
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 Passes 3-0. Jay, Pauline, Dave, and Ty, thanks for joining us today and bringing this to us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Nice to
you.
meet you guys.
Okay, bye-bye. We'll move to appointments. Do we have any appointments today?
I don't believe so.
I don't.
I do not.
Sarah, have we gotten like a formal acknowledgement from the Planning Commission about that resignation?
I don't believe I have seen it yet, and but I'll try to check with Jeff Crick.
Thank you.
Seeing no appointments, let's move on to general public comment. General public comment is at the end of each meeting with a limit of 1 comment per person. The commission reserves the right to place a time limit of 3 minutes per speaker if desired. Individuals may not give unused time to other speakers. As a general practice, the commission will not discuss or debate, nor will the commission make any decisions on items presented during this time. Rather, they will refer to item staff for follow-up if necessary. All comments should be directed toward the county commission. Sarah, is there anyone there who'd like to provide public comment?
There is not.
Thank you. Jill, anyone online?
There is not.
Okay, so we will close general public comment and we will move to commissioner or administrator miscellaneous. And when we do this, we start with Sarah.
Thank you, commissioners. There is a memo in your packet for this week. There are a couple things I wanted to highlight on there, and I am trying to pull it up. Let's see here if I'm there. There I am. Okay, so just wanted to let you know we are still wrapping up some requests for related to the May 2019 tornado, related to the disaster relief applications. So the appraiser's office has shared several disaster relief applications. They're in that packet. We talked about this last year that we would just communicate with the commission when we receive those applications. That program, I think we have one more that's under consideration, and that program automatically expires in December of this year. Also included in your packet is a legislative update from Stuart Little related to legislative and policy updates, and a brief summary from the League of Kansas Municipalities related to COVID-19. We've included Stuart's updates to you in the past, and as we've talked about extending his relationship here with Douglas County, I wanted to make sure you had that. Also, I asked Daviana to put in the memo an update on the number of CARES Act conversations that we have had in the last week. You know, one of the things that we have been working really hard to try to get the information out about the CARES Act and to eligible organizations. And we've had a series of meetings. It's been pretty much what we've been doing full time over the last week to get information out. Today, I was on a call with the Lawrence Chamber of Commerce that had over 100 people on it related to CARES Act funding, and we have one more scheduled for tomorrow night. Those, and then I've also included, staff's also included here a timeline for what, how I think we're going to review these once they come to us and with the coordination team. So I'd ask commissioners to take a look at that and make sure if you have any questions about that, that we have some time to discuss them. Basically, you know, I am hoping that we have everything in before August 3rd, because this is a lot of information to get together in a very brief period of time. We do believe some of it will be really coming in mid next week and early next week. We want to try to prepare it in a manner that is digestible for the commission and for the public at large. I will tell you, I'm expecting hundreds of applications. So, you know, trying to make sure that it's complete, that it's eligible, that we have all the needed information is going to be a large process. I also wanted to highlight something that I don't know that I've talked about specifically with the commission in the past, that is a part of this application process. Not only do we have organizations completing basically a spreadsheet outlining what the program detail is, but we're asking them to complete an equity impact analysis. And so we have added embedded equity into the recovery team, and they have developed a really quick, easy, simple tool to help highlight and promote ways that these funds will be impacting disadvantaged and populations in our community, and how this project might further promote equity work in the community. So I think it's really exciting for us to take kind of a big step towards you know, focusing and highlighting information related to equity in our decision-making process. So every project will submit an Excel spreadsheet and an equity impact form. And we will make sure that we have both of those pieces and that we're able to sort of share that with the commission and the public as we talk about how these funds are spent. Equity and impacting disproportionately impacted populations is a part of what the governor's office has told us should be considered in making these decisions. So it's included in that process. My hope is then that we will have, staff will be able to get our hands around all the information, to put it all together, and that we will review it on August 4th, hopefully, with the recovery coordination team. And then on your meeting on the 5th, which we had originally planned to cancel, and I do appreciate commissioners' willingness to meet on that date. But I'm hoping just to keep the agenda to this item, and so we can focus on that, to really walk you through each of the particularly recovery support functions that have put together these projects, and then let you all ask questions, think, and then give ourselves more time to share that information publicly, and then have a formal vote on the item on the 12th. We do have some possibility, if that is not enough time or we don't make that timeline, to have some additional commission conversations. It is due on the 15th, but they've told us that it can be submitted by the 17th. So we do have a little bit of time in there to make sure that we have the program the way we want. I would say that, you know, we are still in many ways don't have a lot of clear guidance from the state on some of the questions that we've asked related to business interruption and loss of revenue and capital projects. So some of this we're just going to have to do the best we can and submit projects and see what the state says. There was a lot of information released today about CARES Act Round 2. And I know I've talked about that with the commission in the past that it would be focused on economic impact. Well, it looks like the Spark Committee has changed that a little bit and is broadening the approach of it, which is great for a lot of places, but it may not leave as many funds available to small businesses and to other entities as originally planned. We're going to be working really closely to try to get that information out to the community at large. There's a ton of potential in there for a lot of exciting things that the county is really involved in, including behavioral health and support for behavioral health and support for food systems, and a lot of really interesting projects coming down the pike in terms of that. Some interesting things in terms of connectivity that could really spark the imagination of some folks. So it's a 102-page PowerPoint. And so we're trying to sort of send it out and say, like, go to page 68 if you want to know more about this, and hopefully get that information out as well. You know, I do want to tell the commission that we have been working closely at the county level and with emergency management and with staff through the recovery team, not only just as a recovery team, but there have been a lot of conversations about how we can support the educational institutions in our community as they, it was an interesting day at the State Board of Education. The governor has orders coming out related to what K-12 can do and what happens to students in the K-12 environment. There's a lot of overlapping layers of the governor, the State Board of Ed, local school boards, the public health officer, the Board of County Commissioners can overrule a public health officer. So there's so many layers in this conversation. One of the strategies that we look to do is to specifically stand up unified command related to education. Not only K-12 and private schools and daycare in our community, but also higher education. We've been working closely with Dr. Gerard and his team to talk about the plans for reopening the University of Kansas. You've probably read about some of them in the paper. I do know that they're looking to make a request for CARES Act funding to help make sure that they're able to safely open. They're working collaboratively with LMH Health and Public Health to develop those plans and strategies. And I know they're interested in having our help and support on this community conversation. I feel like it's important to say that all of the leaders engaged in this work are being very thoughtful, careful, deliberate, conscious, led by science, and are very concerned to make sure our community is as safe as it possibly can be. We know people want answers. Answers are in short supply. It's our ability to know and manage this pandemic is a challenge. But I am very proud of the people that I'm working with, and you should be very proud of the leaders in your community that are trying to come together to answer questions in this very difficult time. So I'm excited about that opportunity. I'm excited about that opportunity to take public engagement and public communication to a different level as we talk about what we need here in our community to continue to try to continue to be safe as we move through August and September and October and into the fall. So I'd be glad to answer any questions commissioners have on CARES Act and the possibility of standing up unified command for education, or anything else the commission might want to know about.
I don't have a question, just a comment, and that's, I just wanted to say how really effective the webinar was today, that Steve Kelly and Diane Stoddard, Sarah and Jasmine, and a couple other folks were speakers for the Economic Impact RSF group. And it was probably the first time that I finally had a sense of what that part of the CARES Act was going to look like. And a really fabulous website has been created for that particular group. And I think if you haven't seen it yet or seen anything kind of with much detail about what we're going to be needing to, make decisions about, looking at that website is really helpful. It's just one of the 4 categories, but I think it's really comprehensive and kind of gives the right feel for what we're looking for and what the process is behind all of the work that's going to come to us. So Sarah, I just wanted to say thank you so much, because you all have had a Herculean effort, but it seems like it's really coming together in an accessible way that now is getting out to the public in a pretty large scope of public participation now. So thank you for all that hard work. It was really good today.
Thank you. And I do think each RSF has sort of taken a different approach to how they get that information out. Some folks are really using our countywide, coronavirus hub to access some of that information, and we have pretty good connections with that. But I was very impressed with what the city and the chamber came together very quickly to pull together that information and put it out there. So, and we have one more webinar tomorrow night that I'll be on at 6:30 to talk about that as well.
Yes, Sarah, I don't really have any questions. I've been sitting in on the education ones, and I will say, I'm glad to hear Unified Command is set up. I think those folks are not used to working together. That's each school, and we've got private schools engaged, we've got KU engaged, and you would think that they would work together, but they really don't. They really are their own entities doing their own thing. And so in all those calls, it's sort of, I hope, and I'm so grateful for the fact that our Douglas County superintendents have been meeting regularly, because I know they're having conversations about, and I think we'll see some proposals that will be county-wide with multiple school districts involved. We heard today some pretty exciting things about early childhood and some partnerships that are going on there, which I think are long overdue, and really great to hear. So, we heard the arts group talk earlier about a silver lining. I think there may be some silver linings here of just partners working together who haven't worked together before. So, there's so many people working so hard and working so fast right now, and trying to do the best for our community. I don't want our community to forget all these people who are really trying to make really tough decisions, and bring great proposals as part of that CARES Act funding. So thanks for your work, Sarah, and getting these groups up and standing. And I know behind the scenes that Burke is doing a ton of work as well. And getting all those financial documents isn't easy. And I hope we can do more to get our community involved. I'm really interested to see where the equity documentation goes. And, I'm curious to see if that's something we might use in the future in our own policies, if we feel like it's helpful. So, we don't really have an equity review of our policies, and it would be interesting to see what that would look like for ours. I'm not saying this is good. I'm just saying I think it would be interesting to see how. I'm sure it's great. That's why we're using it for CARES Act. But I think, does it work for other things as well? I'm just interested to see that.
Yeah, I'd say that I think that's a question I think, we're asking ourselves internally on a lot of those things. And I'm just really pleased that the equity team was able to pivot so quickly and give us a tool so quickly that we could use in this process. And I know how quick this has been. Boy, I'd love 6 more months to make sure it's all done right. We just don't have it. And so no one has sort of thrown up their hands and said, we can't do this. Everyone has just dug in and found a way to pull it all together. And our internal team, so in addition to Brooke, Jill is leading an RSF group, and Robert Benecki and Jillian Rodriguez have been heavily engaged in helping to support RSF in this process, and Carrie Britt and Daviana Humble in terms of helping us manage our website and communications. And Carrie's tireless work with the PIO team that really she's an integral part of that effort from a countywide perspective. We've got some exciting things, I think, that I'm actually hopeful about that I'm hoping we can do this fall. So.
Since Jill is here, Jill, do you mind giving us just a little bit of a, summary overview of what's happening on the Human Services group? Sorry to put you on the spot. Really, not really, but
Yeah, if we can hear her. I know she was having some
Oh,
technological.
maybe she has some technical difficulties. She'll be back in a minute.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay.
Hey, Sarah, while we're waiting for Jill, quick question. On the August 5th meeting where we're going to get our first look, is that a 5:30 meeting or is that a 4 o'clock?
We could do whatever the commission wants. I was assuming 5:30 since that would really be the only thing that
Yeah.
planned would be my hope.
That I just found out about a 4 o'clock kind of necessary meeting I need to be at. So 5:30 if we can would be great.
Definitely.
Thank you.
I'm back. I'm sorry.
Jill, I was just asking if you could give us just a little bit of a summary of the Human Services RSF group that I know you've been working with them.
Sure. Well, we did 2 webinars last week for the RSF3, not just the RSF3 group, but also for largely the Human Services Coalition audience, which is a ton of people. And the RSF group, just like all the other RSFs, were organized in a way not necessarily they weren't organized initially to be the administrators of CARES Act money. They were largely, for my RSF in particular, meant to be a group of folks that I knew were actively engaged in helping create strategies and solutions to how we could be more strategic and impactful in this particular area as we move into the future. But so I knew that to get the word out on this funding, I'd need to get the message out to that full Human Services Coalition. And so that was really well received. Sarah and I tag teamed on that. And I would say I have had follow-up calls and kind of more detailed conversations with individual, at least it's getting close to 40 agencies in the last week, just making sure that they're understanding the details and filling them out accordingly. And so as far as I know, I think Sarah's assessment of how many applications we're going to get, I think she's probably pretty accurate. But I do feel really confident that there's a lot of shared agreement in our RSF around our focus areas, which are housing stabilization and supporting folks that, not only the folks that were already living on the margins, but those that, but for COVID would not be in a situation where they're looking at an eviction, not being able to pay their utilities. So we're really going to be looking very, very carefully for proposals that support that sort of infrastructure in the community. How we can continue to support our community feeding programs with looking at Just Food obviously as being kind of our lead, the hub of our community feeding efforts. How do we continue to support our shelter and congregate site facilities to make sure that they have the equipment, the materials, and also the guidance that they need to continue to navigate moving forward. That continues to go really well. And then our homeless population, our unsheltered population, what are some of the improvements that we can make as a community to better serve that population, in particular the ones that are living out on the streets, unsheltered? What equipment, what services do we need to have available that we can accomplish with those one-time dollars? And then the last one that we just recently added focus area is around digital inclusion and equity. And that is one that the equity advisors and I have talked a little bit about. It's kind of a cross-cutting issue. And we think it's going to emerge as a community-wide, it's going to emerge as an element, or it should emerge as an element in all the RSFs as we move forward on a strategy and strategies. The Lawrence Public Library is going to be the kind of the lead agency that's going to be making an ask as part of the city's request to do a digital inclusion project in partnership with community social service agencies, where they're going to be lending out Chromebooks, and depending on the relationships that those social service agencies like Ballard and Willow and SRC have, to make sure that they're connecting vulnerable populations that don't have, that are lacking access to digital resources to apply for benefits, or know what benefits are available, or just know what's going on. But that area in particular, I think if we look at how the RSFs are being used for a lot in terms of, you know, short-term things that we need to accomplish with CARES, but long-term in terms of what are the strategies that we need to be working on. The digital equity is one that I'm really excited about, and I have had a couple conversations already with the technology officer with the library, Jim Lawson from our organization, Jim Wisdom, and Michael Aldridge. And they've really got a ton of energy around creating some sort of a community coalition around digital equity that I think positions us nicely to possibly apply for some significant dollars in that round 2 or round 3 part of the Spark funding, because so much of it is focused on community connectivity. So that's where I'm at.
Thanks, Jill. Appreciate it. Any other questions for Sarah or Jill?
The only other thing I wanted to mention, switching topics away from CARES Act funding, is that we did include in there what our work sessions we have coming up for August and September. We've got lots of room, so if there are particular topics that commissioners want to hear about as we're looking to plan work sessions for August and September, you know, let me know so we can begin to develop those. And I did want to mention that I am planning to, I've had a couple conversations with our criminal justice coordinator, Mike Brower, and to bring him back before the commission, hopefully next week. So just to give an update as to what happened at CJCC, and then our ongoing conversations with criminal justice stakeholders. And that's all I have, commissioners.
Yes, Sarah, could you talk about that last one a little more? I mean, you know, talk about the plans with the city. We asked for them, you know, in some way to maybe, you know, we wanted to engage more with the city as a user of the criminal justice system and where we are with that. I know that Mike is coming back, but also I know you're swamped, but, you know, sort of looking at a different budgetary model for the jail. Is that sort of on hold until we're after CARES Act? You know, do we look at that for 2021? I mean, do we look at that for 2021? Can you just sort of give us an update on those 3 things?
Sure. So what I will mention is that we are on the City Commission agenda for the CJCC to present an update to the City Commission on our work that the CJCC has been doing for the last several years. So my hope is that's a beginning conversation and a beginning education point for the commission to see the breadth and depth and experience that this group has and the work that's already being done and well underway in our community. My hope is after that, there can be conversations about, okay, so what's next? And how would the Lawrence City Commission and or the Lawrence City government like to get further engaged in that work? Included in our Douglas County stakeholders, criminal justice stakeholders, does include Lawrence Municipal Court and the Lawrence Police Department, and they've been active members of that. So part of what I hope to do at like next week's meeting is to kind of give you an update on what everybody's sort of thinking about in terms of programs and projects that they've been working on. We did have a pretty robust conversation about that at CJCC, and as you know, CJCC is meeting monthly. And so we've got, we're already planning what we want to talk about in August on that. So I feel like we are really continuing to work hard in terms of monitoring the situation at the correctional facility, and to, really challenge and encourage our partners in this work to stay engaged and to work hard to help us find solutions. In terms of like conversations related to alignment of expenditures, I think those are yet to come, and I'd be interested to see how, with a new sheriff coming on board, it will take us some time to really orient some conversations around that, and that's part of the struggle that we are in right now. Is we're in kind of transition in terms of that office.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful. Any other items, commissioners?
I had just a request from Michael Davidson that the county commission consider signing on to the Lawrence Promise Pledge, which is easy to find on their website. And it's a pledge that our county government, our facility will practice all the public health standards that necessary to be responsible citizens and responsible facility for this COVID season. So I guess I'm wondering if you all would be interested in maybe just looking at that promise sometime this week, and maybe we could bring it back next week and see if we want to sign on as the county commission or Douglas County government.
I did receive that from Michael a while back, and honestly, it has not risen to the top of my plate.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure we felt like it was appropriate. It felt like a lot more of something that, restaurants and so forth were really using. So I apologize that I have not had time to dig in a little deeper.
Yeah. No, that's okay. He mentioned that that he had taken it to the city and that they've signed on. So I think he just kind of wanted that bookend situation. And I read it before the meeting, and it, I think it implies that whoever signs it will follow, the proper facility cleaning and, all of the mitigation measures that we try to do, which I think our operations are, although we're not quite open, but anyway, it's just, I wanted to just pass that along, that Michael was requesting that we take a look at that.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah, if you review it and feel like we're meeting all of that, I think that would be fine to look at. I mean, but I would want you to review it and sort of give us your recommendation on it for sure.
I'll see if I can get a chance to review it in advance of next week's meeting so that we could make a decision then.
In all your free time.
Yeah.
I did say at one point in time, between 2 and 3 a.m. I have plenty of time. So
You can just file your overtime slips, Sarah. We appreciate that. We'll get those taken care of.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else, commissioners? Okay. Until we meet again next Wednesday, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.